At the Regional Monitoring Program, our focus when it comes to chemicals of emerging concern is to spot any potential threats before they become actual problems. We want to stay ahead of the curve and prevent harmful pollution from happening. Chemicals of emerging concern are chemicals that aren't regulated and they're not typically monitored in the environment, but we have new reason to believe that they might be getting out into the environment and that they could cause potential problems for human health or ecological health. When we look at chemicals of emerging concern, we figure out how concerned to be about each one by using a risk-based framework. Our highest concern category currently is empty. That means that no chemicals in the bay are causing moderate or high-level impacts as far as we can tell. This is great news, and we want to make sure it stays that way. The Regional Monitoring Program has identified 4 moderate concern chemicals for San Francisco Bay. And those 4 are stain repellent called PFAS, a flame retardant called PBDEs, some surfactants called nonylphenol ethoxylates, which degrade to nonylphenol, and finally an ant and flea pesticide called fipronil. Typically, CECs enter the bay through 2 different pathways: treated wastewater and stormwater. The wastewater treatment facilities that deal with our sewage are designed to handle human waste and food waste, and they can't completely remove all the thousands of other chemicals we flush through the system. When it comes to stormwater, all our great rains, besides nourishing the land, they do wash a lot of different chemicals into streams and into drainages that empty into the bay. And this stormwater often has little or no treatment, so a lot of chemicals can get in the bay that way. PBDEs, or polybrominated diphenyl ethers, are chemical flame retardants. Manufacturers use these chemicals for decades, adding them to consumer products in order to meet different flammability standards, including some unique to California. Now, later, scientists figured out that these chemicals were toxic and that they were accumulating in people and in wildlife, like our harbor seals. So as a result, our state banned 2 different kinds of PBDEs, and nationwide they were phased out back in the mid-2000s. Our monitoring work indicates that these PBDEs are declining in the bay as a result of these actions. The final type of PBDE was phased out of production in the U.S. in 2013. Chemicals of emerging concern are a pretty diverse group of chemicals, so you've got a pretty diverse group of trends that you might see depending on which chemical you're looking at. Some of these chemicals have been the subject of pollution prevention policies like phase-outs or bans, and for some of these chemicals we've seen declines. A great example is PBDEs. Other chemicals prove more intractable, so even though, for example, PFAS has been phased out nationwide, we're still seeing high levels in our harbor seals, and we're not sure why. Many other chemicals, most of them, have not been the subject of any kind of action, and so there's no real policy mechanism to reduce levels to the bay.
It is a very mixed picture, and especially in marine mammals, it's hard to say because they really do hold on to these chemicals in their tissues, particularly their blubber, which is a storage tissue for these animals, as well as a thermoregulatory part of their body. But they hold these chemicals for their entire lives. The chemicals increase over their lifespan as they eat contaminated fish, and then they pass these chemicals on to their young through milk and through gestation in the uterus. So that makes them really difficult to see a decrease because it will take generations for that decline to show up in the animals that we sample.
We do periodic sampling of mussels, sport fish, the kind that our fishermen catch and eat, and aquatic bird eggs, such as the eggs of cormorants. We also do occasional studies on marine mammals like harbor seals or on smaller fish.
So the marine mammals that we study in the bay, that make the most sense to study in the bay, really are harbor seals because they are present year-round and constantly eating food from the bay that's come into the bay, lives in the bay. They're getting inputs from the water and the air. So they are kind of perfect animal to sample within the bay. We're also interested in contaminant effects on harbor porpoises, which have recently returned to the San Francisco Bay, California sea lions, which migrate through the bay, and also larger cetaceans, which are unusual but do occur in the bay every once in a while, gray whales, humpback whales. marine mammals really synthesize the entire food web in terms of contaminant concentrations that move up from something tiny like a single-celled organism all the way up to fish and birds and marine mammals. So they are highly contaminated compared to some of these organisms, which make it easy to detect high levels and also figure out when something's really moved into the marine ecosystem to that level. I'm very hopeful and pleased with the level of collaboration that's occurring in San Francisco Bay right now between scientists, policy people, stakeholders, water management groups. So I'm really hoping that between all of that we can come up with an integrated plan for both monitoring and understanding climate change effects, pollutant effects, everything that's happening to change the San Francisco Bay ecosystem right now.
Here in the state of California, we've got a new green chemistry initiative where we're examining consumer products and trying to make them safer. Now what this means is that the products we buy and use every day are going to have fewer toxic chemicals, and that should mean less pollution for the bay.